Minister of Education says 3 ministries are working on getting the students abroad back home. Minister of Tourism has now set the rescheduling of flights from the U.S. to August the 1st. But first up, Prime Minister asks, how can we have a discussion with our stakeholders without having any insight of what is in the document? Those are the headlines for Wednesday, July the 8th, 2020. Good evening, everyone. This is SXM Daily News, and I am Valerie Van Putten. And as usual, we have a packed newscast for you this evening, so let's get started. In our first story, Prime Minister of St. Martin, the Honorable Sylvania Jacobs, elucidated about the conditions that have been set forward by the Netherlands. The employed and the unemployed, a cut in the personnel costs and not to hire any new personnel, the loan conditions, among others, and conditions of control. The Prime Minister also spoke of the document that was furthermore shared in a confidential manner. She is asking, how can we have a discussion with our stakeholders without having any insight of what is in the document?
The document was furthermore shared in a confidential manner. This confidentiality of the Kingdom Council of Ministers prohibits the sharing of the document with others. Now, how in God's name are we expected to have a discussion with our stakeholders without them having any insight into this document? I think that in and of itself is very indecent, and I am going to be having a meeting with my parliament this afternoon, and we'll be having a very frank discussion on this. So you can tune in this afternoon to get even more information, the details of which I have not necessarily shared yet, even though I am seeing information and hearing information via social media and from the other countries as to what this entity is and will look like. What I can tell the people of St. Martin is that on Saturday last, on July 4th, I received a phone call, or accepted a phone call, a planned phone call with the State Secretary Raymond Knops and his Director General of Kingdom Relations, Henk Brons, together with my representative from BAC and my legal advisor. So in that phone call, we were a little more updated as to why we had not received the documents yet. I may have said it before that I have sent a letter, though I had tried to make it a joint letter with Aruba and Curacao at the time, especially, our counterparts, Aruba, were doing their best to live up to the conditions to be able to get the last tranche or the third tranche. What I can say is the Netherlands is sweetening the pot, offering not only a third tranche, but the possibility for more funding for projects, for programs, etc., making it very, very attractive. But what you will have to give up to be able to get that loan is quite heavy indeed. And I believe it deserves the trajectory that has been put forth in the Kingdom Statutes, the Kingdom Charter, which determines how a Kingdom consensus law must be handled. And this is definitely not the way. This is bully tactics 101, and St. Martin and the other Caribbean countries within the Kingdom will definitely, we are standing strong together to not accept such. I have also from Mr. Knops heard, and it's been confirmed now by the documents that have arrived, that the entity will be independent, zelfstandig bestuursorgaan, independent entity, taking direction directly from the BZK ministry, the Ministry of Interior and Kingdom Relations. So the Minister of BZK in the Netherlands would, by virtue, be running the 3 countries. They would set the trajectory. They would have the ability to give aanwijzingen, instructions to that entity in terms of what is to be carried out, etc. There is talk about agreements per country with the entity, but if in advance you are asked to agree to an entity that usurps the right of Parliament to hold ministers accountable by determining, as we have with previous conditions, that this law must be passed and it must bring the ages to 65 and it must do this, that's our pension laws, and it must do that, you are telling Parliament you either pass it that way or you don't get the funds.
And in other news at this time, in this item out of the island of Curacao, the Curacao government is angry about the conditions that The Hague has set for the new so-called Corona loans. According to the Eugene Rugenath's cabinet, part of the conditions completely conflict with the rights that are guaranteed within the kingdom for Curacao, Aruba, and St. Martin. This affects democracy, says the government. Curacao is angry about the conditions of agreeing to the establishment of an institute in the Netherlands with which Dutch experts will take decisions in the next 7 years and will intervene directly in the communities of Curacao, Aruba, and St. Martin. Curacao considers the conditions imposed by the Netherlands to be completely unreasonable and totally inappropriate within the way in which the countries in the kingdom treat each other. The Netherlands wants the yes from Curacao within a few days. Otherwise, it will not receive the new Corona loan. The conditions were sent to Willemstad on Monday. On Friday, the Kingdom Council of Ministers will discuss a new loan of millions for Curacao, Aruba, and St. Martin. Curacao thinks that it is far too tight. The Corona loans are intended to alleviate the financial problems caused by the Corona crisis in the islands. The Netherlands sets conditions on the loans to implement reforms that, according to the Undersecretary of Kingdom Relations, Raymond Knops, are badly needed and aim to reform the economic and financial policies of the countries in order to make them more resilient to any new crises. Meanwhile, Minister of TEAT, the Honorable Ludmila de Wever, gave an update of the developments since last week's press conference on the opening, or the reopening rather, of the airport. The minister said that while they postponed the opening of the airport and the new opening date of U.S. flights, this is an ever-changing situation regarding dates, so it has now been pushed back to August the 1st, 2020.
I wanted to provide an update on the developments since last week's press conference regarding the reopening of the airport. We expected to welcome visitors as of July 1st and subsequently had to postpone that 2 weeks while we reassess the escalating number of cases in the USA. As a precautionary measure, we decided with the approval and support of the Council of Ministers that we would push the date of opening to US flights to August 1st, 2020. And I would like to remind the public that this is an ever-changing situation regarding dates, which is why we're trying to minimize the amount of postponements that we would have, but seeing the developments still ongoing in the US, that is why we have decided that August 1st is an appropriate date. PCR testing in advance will continue to be a requirement for entry into the country. And we will continue to review the countries that we reopen to based on the recommendations from the Ministry of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, as they have a measuring scale for low, medium, high risk exposure for the countries that we open to. And for any updates on the latest information, you can always go to the Facebook page of the Ministry of TEAT. You can go to the Vacation St. Martin page, follow the links to St. Martin updates from the Tourism Office. And as a reminder, one other thing I would like to mention that Minister of Education Samuel brought up is regarding the repatriation flights. We are actively working on that right now, and we will hear today whether or not which airline will confirm that they will make themselves available for us, because we also have some US citizens that have to leave St. Martin to go to the US. What I will say, because I heard that it was not mentioned previously, because we have a large number of residents and students that are still outside of the island, we have been in discussion with the Ministry of VSA via CPS specifically to allow our residents and students to come home, but they will have to be into 14-day quarantine. I just wanted to mention that because in that way it takes away the pressure a little bit from the PCR testing. And but again, all of this information will be available. We will ask all the ministers to post it on all of their Facebook, on the government page, through the newspapers, as many places as possible once we've confirmed this date, so everyone has sufficient time to make arrangements to get to the city of departure.
And still to come, Minister of Health gives update on the reopening of the airport and the health and safety measures that needs to be taken. We'll have the details to that story and more when SXM Daily News returns.
GEBE has been faithfully serving the communities of St. Martin, powering your home and our economy. Come rain or shine, our qualified team of professionals are working hard 24 hours a day to provide you and your family with safe, reliable electricity and water. We use the latest technologies and test our products daily to maintain the highest international standards. Our friendly staff is always there to assist you, whether in person, over the phone, or online. We are committed to constantly improving our products and services, making them more efficient, effective, and environmentally friendly to serve you better today and our next generation of clients tomorrow. GEBE, powering a brighter future.
Our friend Megawati is here with tips to save you energy. 1. Turn your airco temperature up. 2. Use a ceiling fan instead. 3. Buy energy-saving products. Save some green with NVGEBE.
And welcome back. You are listening to and watching the SXM Daily News. In other news for you at this time, Minister of Education, the Honorable Dr. Anders Rodolph Samuel, gave an update and addressed the issue of the students who are abroad and are waiting to come back to the island. The minister says that 3 ministries are currently working together to get our students back home. The minister gave the update at this morning's virtual Council of Ministers weekly press briefing.
This morning, I would like to start by addressing an issue that is very necessary for us to understand, and that has to do with our students who are abroad and are waiting to come back. What has happened is that many students have had preparation, they have bought a ticket or they had prepared to come back to St. Martin when we indicated that St. Martin, the airport, would be open on the 1st of July. When that did not happen, we can imagine that persons would, have a lot of questions. So what the government did is we went over to make a repatriation flight available. Now, for that to happen, 3 ministries are working closely together in order to make that happen. And that would be the Ministry of General Affairs in regards to foreign relations, the Ministry of TIAT in regards to the flights, and then the Ministry of Education in regards to the students themselves. So yes, we are working hard and diligently to see to it that we can get our students back home. At this moment, I can inform you that we have about 60 students that are ready to come home. And of the 60 students, we have spoken to 58 of them. The information that has been provided for the persons that wants to make use of the repatriation flight was given out to anyone who have asked for that information. And the ministry continue to work to make sure that we can give you as much information as possible about the repatriation flight. The flight had to be prepared, and at the same time, we had to take into account that we could not move the flight before sufficient persons were ready to move. So I can imagine those who were ready in the beginning that would just have to hold on a bit until the others get in line or where they get to go. Now, there are 3 pertinent pieces of information that needs to go out, and then I think everyone would know what's happening. And that is the place of departure, the date of departure, and the airline. So those 3 things, that is the only thing that is pending. And I know that my colleague is working on this, and we will then give that when it is ready. It is not good if we were to give you a date and an airline and a place, and then we would have to change it. So we have to make sure that when we give that information, it is solid and we can work with it.
And in other news at this time, Minister of Health, the Honorable Richard Panafleck, speaking at the Council of Ministers' virtual weekly press briefing this morning, brought the public up to speed on the reopening of the Princess Juliana International Airport and the health and safety measures that needs to be taken and that will be enforced.
The Ministry of VSI is working constantly to be able to safely reopen Princess Juliana International Airport and effectively screen and respond to incoming residents and visitors traveling to St. Martin. The Ministry is in final stages of hiring additional staff under the supervision of the Collective Prevention Services. This additional staff will consist of 6 nurses and a physician. The main task of the additional staff for the CPS will be the following: to conduct observational screening of incoming passengers at the airport, to conduct health screening at the airport, including temperature checks, to perform testing for COVID-19, source and contact tracing, and daily follow-up of quarantine and isolated persons. These persons will be placed on a 6-month contract in order for the Ministry to assess what will be required in the long run as the COVID-19 pandemic develops. While 7 persons are still far from what is required, the Ministry intends to work with what they have as other options are still being sought. Brighter days are ahead. Please let us continue to practice social distancing, wearing masks when in public, and proper sanitation while looking forward to COVID-19 free days.
And on the topic of labor, the Minister of VSA says that maintaining labor peace should be the ultimate goal while improving the labor relationships between employers and workers by having both parties resolve their differences around the negotiating table. This is the sentiment of the minister, who congratulated the head of the mediating team at the Department of Labor.
Maintaining labor peace should be the ultimate goal, while improving the labor relationships between employers, workers, by having both parties resolve their differences at the negotiation table. The role of a mediator is an impartial one, which helps parties reduce the extent of their differences. The outcome of a successful mediation is a new balance that resolves the prevailing dispute and therefore establishes a foundation for a more cooperative relationship amongst parties. Once again, congratulations to the mediator, Marcelina Loblack, and her team at the Department of Labor.
The St. Martin Police Force Dispatch Center received a call for what was explained to be to the dispatcher as a stabbing that had taken place just after midnight Tuesday in the vicinity of the stoplight on the Nisbeth Road. The patrols that were in the area immediately rushed to the scene, where they encountered a female who informed them that she had gotten into a scuffle with a man who attempted to steal her cellular phone while she was in the casino. The suspect grabbed and ran off with her phone, and she immediately followed behind to retrieve her property. The situation quickly escalated into a physical altercation once the victim caught up to the suspect. The suspect pulled out a knife and stabbed the victim in her hand in an effort to evade apprehension. The paramedics were also called to the scene to treat the victim's wound, and she was later transported to the St. Martin Medical Center. The patrols were able to arrest the suspect with initials J.R., who was still in the area. The suspect was transported to the police department, where he is being held for questioning. And in other news for you at this time, the 5th named storm, Edward, of the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season formed over the past weekend south of Newfoundland, Canada, and this is a stark reminder to be prepared, the Office of Disaster Management, ODM, said on Tuesday. Edward, according to weather forecasters, is the earliest storm on record to form so early in the season. On Tuesday, the Colorado State University Department of Atmospheric Science released its July 7th seasonal forecast for the hurricane season, where they increased the number of storms expected to form to 20 instead of 16 from its initial forecast on April the 2nd, which was 16. The number of named storm days is 85, and hurricane days is 40. 9 hurricanes, of which 4 are expected to become major hurricanes of Category 3+. 15 named storms are still expected to form between now and the end of the season, which is November the 30th. The remaining storm names for the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season are Faye, Gonzalo, Hannah, Isaias, Josephine, Kyle, Laura, Marco, Nana, Omar, Paulette, Renee, Sally, Teddy, Vicky, and Wilfred. Remember, it only takes one hurricane to make it a bad season. Be prepared this hurricane season, the release reads in part. Now, turning to our weather forecast for July the 8th, 2020. The Atlantic high pressure ridge with drier air in the wake of a tropical wave will result in an improvement of weather conditions. Additionally, increasing Saharan dust will aid in restricting precipitation and account for hazy skies. Persons with allergies and/or respiratory illnesses should continue to take the necessary precautions. A small craft advisory is in effect for St. Martin until Thursday morning. Small craft operators and sea bathers should continue to exercise caution. So the outlook through Friday morning, partly cloudy and breezy with light haze and isolated showers possible. Now let's turn to your 3-day forecast. And still to come, the WHO acknowledges evidence emerging of the airborne spread of the novel coronavirus. We'll have the details to that story and more with SXM Daily News Report.
Make use of WIB mobile banking with easy access and direct usage of face recognition, PIN code, or fingerprint. Download WIB mobile banking app and make your transaction from anywhere at any time. For more information, visit wib-bank.net/quick-login.
And in more news for you at this time, the World Health Organization on Tuesday acknowledged evidence emerging of the airborne spread of the novel coronavirus after a group of scientists urged the global body to update its guidance on how the respiratory disease passes between people. We have been talking about the possibility of airborne transmission and aerosol transmission as one of the modes of transmission of COVID-19, Maria van Kerkhove, technical lead on the COVID-19 pandemic at the WHO, told a news briefing. Speaking at Tuesday's briefing in Geneva, Professor Benedetta Allegranzi, the WHO's technical lead for infection prevention and control, said that there was evidence emerging of airborne transmission of the coronavirus, but that it was not definitive.
We have discussed and collaborated with many of the signatories of the articles that you have mentioned over the last few months. And indeed, we discussed the available evidence that has been discussed in these pieces. And also, we received contributions from many of the signatories of these pieces. We acknowledge that there is emerging evidence in this field, as in all other fields, regarding the COVID-19 virus and pandemic. And therefore, we believe that we have to be open to this evidence and understand its implications regarding the modes of transmission and also regarding the precautions that need to be taken.
We have been engaged with this group since April, when they first wrote to us on April 1st, and we've had an active engagement with them and with many of the signatories on this through different networks. And as we have said previously, we welcome the interaction from scientists all over the world from many different disciplines. Many of the signatories are engineers, which is a wonderful area of expertise, which adds to growing knowledge about the importance of ventilation, which we feel also is very important. We have been talking about the possibility of airborne transmission and aerosol transmission as one of the modes of transmission of COVID-19, as well as droplet. We've looked at fomites, we look at fecal oral, we look at mother to child, we look at animal to human, of course, as well. And so we are producing a scientific brief on summarizing where we are. We've been working on this for several weeks now, and we've engaged with a large number of groups, epidemiologists and clinicians, IPC specialists, engineers, mathematical modelers, to try to consolidate the growing knowledge around transmission. But we have spoken about the importance of all of the different potential modes of transmission. This is a respiratory pathogen, and so it is important that what we know fits into the guidance that we have.
And as we continue now with more news, and as we reported on Monday last that Brazil was set to pass 1.5 million coronavirus cases as cities reopen anyway, we have learned from CNN News that Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has tested positive for COVID-19 following months of downplaying the virus. Bolsonaro himself announced the result, speaking on Brazilian TV channels Tuesday, that when he was quoted as saying that everyone knew that it would reach a considerable part of the population sooner or later. It was positive for me, he said, referring to the COVID-19 test he took on Monday. On Sunday, I wasn't feeling very well. On Monday, it got worse when I started feeling tired and some muscle pain. I also had a 38 degrees Celsius fever. Given those symptoms, the presidential doctor said that there was a suspicion of COVID-19, Bolsonaro said, adding that he then went to the hospital to receive a lung scan. He said that his wife, First Lady Michelle Bolsonaro, was also tested and that he will begin following some social distancing measures at work. I will dispatch from the office from now on with video conference, he said. Earlier on Tuesday, Bolsonaro told CNN affiliate CNN Brazil that he had been treated with hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin as he awaited the result of his fourth COVID-19 test in 4 months. Hydroxychloroquine, though enthusiastically boosted by both Bolsonaro and U.S. President Donald Trump, has not been proven as an effective treatment for COVID-19. And as we end this edition of SXM Daily News for this evening, American Airlines resumed scheduled service to 8 destinations in the Caribbean on Tuesday, which was previously suspended in March due to coronavirus COVID-19 travel restrictions. The airline resumed its operations from Miami International Airport to Santo Domingo, Santiago, Puerto Plata, and Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic, Port-au-Prince, Haiti, as well as the Eleuthera, Georgetown, and Nassau in the Bahamas. The airline is also planning to relaunch service to St. Lucia, Aruba, St. Vincent, St. Martin, and Providenciales, with some service from both Miami International and Charlotte Douglas International Airport. American has a long and proud history in the Caribbean, and we are thrilled to continue resuming our operations flying this month. A schedule that includes up to 42 daily flights to 19 destinations in the region, said Jose Freig, Managing Director for the Caribbean and Latin America. We are looking forward to safely servicing our customers in the Caribbean and to help restart travel and tourism in the region. And with that, everyone, we've come to the end of this edition of SXM Daily News for this evening. I am Valerie Van Putten, and just a reminder that this and other programs are available online. Simply log on to stmartinmediacenter.com for viewing. And on behalf of SXM Daily News team, we thank you for watching and plan on meeting you right back here again tomorrow.